If you're a fan of the horror genre, you're probably aware of The Shining, a movie that was released in 1980 that has become quite the cult classic. Starring Jack Nicholson in one of his creepiest roles, it's been referenced to death in all sorts of media and discussed by fans everywhere. Looking into the making of such a masterpiece, however, one will find that filming the movie wasn't all that easy for some of the cast, and there are many secrets that have been unearthed that you might find interesting. Today, we'll take a closer look at the more difficult and strange side of making The Shining. Danny Lloyd didn't know he was in a horror movie. In an interview with The Guardian, adult Danny Lloyd, who played the Red Rum Kid himself, explained that he wasn't ever told that he was in a horror movie. He believed he was simply in a movie about a family living in a big hotel and was purposefully kept out of any traumatic horror scenes. For example, in a scene where co-star Shelley Duvall is running with Danny in her arms, they replaced him with a doll. Needless to say, finally seeing the film at a more mature age shocked the actor. Nicholson's personal scene. In 1986, Jack Nicholson told The New Yorker that he wrote one of the movie's scenes. In the film, Jack is interrupted from his writing by his wife, and enraged, he lashes out at her. This scene was written by the actor after a similar event happened in his own life, when his wife at the time interrupted him when he was trying to write a different movie. He says he behaved like a maniac towards her, and after hearing this, director Stanley Kubrick needed to add it into the film. Don't use that number. The exterior shot of the Overlook Hotel is actually the Timberline Lodge, located in Mount Hood, Oregon. However, before the hotel owner allowed Kubrick to use the shot, he had one request. Many of the film's key scary scenes took place originally in room 217, but the hotel owner asked that he not use that number as it was a real room at his lodge and he was worried people would be afraid to stay in it after it was supposedly in The Shining. Kubrick agreed to the term and changed the room to 237, a number that didn't exist at the Timberline Lodge. Personally, I would have loved to have stayed in a famous horror movie room, but that's just me. Kubrick was a nightmare to work with. Stanley Kubrick has a reputation of being one of the most grueling directors to work with. His notorious retakes and the way he treats his actors were both vicious tools he used in The Shining, creating a number of horror stories amongst the cast and crew. Shelley Duvall recounts the events like a hostage trapped in the hotel her very character was. In the famous baseball bat confrontation with Nicholson slowly creeping up the stairs, they had to reshoot the scene 127 times, with Duvall constantly in tears. She had to drink water all the time to stay hydrated due to the amount of crying that was requested of her. And to get to this state of stress wasn't easy either. Kubrick purposefully mistreated the actress and requested that others on set do the same to keep her stressed out all the time. He would always tell her that she wasn't really that good, and give her so much more scolding than the others for missing a cue. Cast and crew were told not to take pity on her, and made her feel genuinely unwanted there. Furthermore, she didn't even like her role. She thought Mrs. Torrance was portrayed as useless and dumb. Other accounts of Kubrick's antics include doing so many retakes with the axe in the door scene that they went through 60 doors, feeding Jack Nicholson food he didn't like just to make him angry, and having his personal secretary type up the 500 pages of "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy" for months. Actor Scatman Clothers, who played the psychic caretaker of the hotel, recounts how after 85 retakes of the tour scene when the Torrance family arrives, he broke down in tears and pleaded, "What do you want, Mr. Kubrick? What do you want?" Illogical set design. You may not notice it unless you're looking for it, but the designers made some odd choices with the hotel's set. In the first scenes, when Jack is meeting with the hotel manager, we see a hallway stretching left and right behind the manager's office. But once we get into the room, there's a window to the outside on the wall which seems impossible. Another anomaly of windows is in the family's suite, where we see windows in the living room, bedroom, and bathroom. However, when Mrs. Torrance escapes via the bathroom window, we see that the room is located between two others, and not on a corner like the impossible windows would suggest. This is further disorienting due to the door at the end of the hall, which also makes no sense, since it would lead outside. More examples of these anomalies include room 237 overlapping where the next door is supposed to be, a stairway that overlaps where the next room is supposed to go, and several walls not thick enough to house the rooms along the inside of them. More nonsensical events include when Mr. Halloran opens the door to the freezer during the tour and it swings different ways between shots. When they exit the freezer, it's through a completely different door. Speaking of the kitchen, it seems to change where it is throughout the film. In one scene, we see Mrs. Torrance leaving the kitchen with a cart on the left side of the lobby. But when Jack is chasing his wife through the kitchen later, he emerges from the right side. You can argue that these inconsistencies were just mistakes, but set designers assure us that it was all intentional. Kubrick wanted the audience to feel lost in the hotel, and what better way to do that than to make every room and corridor feel like it makes no sense. It's almost like being stuck in a maze. Thank you everyone for giving me just a few moments of your day. I hope you learned something interesting and check out some of my other movie reviews, horror stories, and Hollywood content. I'll be taking a week off for a trip to Atlanta where I'll be attending DragonCon, but I have new content on the way when I return. Until next time, take care.